Whoever buys this ranch gets a servant free until the Apache warrior calls her sister. The sun had barely begun to rise over the small frontier town when a hush fell across the dusty main street. Narration. The usual chatter of townsfolk, the clatter of wagon wheels, and the calls of merchants were interrupted by the curious news that had spread like wildfire overnight. At the edge of town, the large, weathered wooden sign of the old ranch caught everyone's attention once again. Beret. It was not its age or size that drew people in. It was the strange advertisement painted boldly across its face. Whoever buys this ranch gets a servant free. It was an offer no one could understand. In a place where every penny counted and every hand was measured in terms of labor, the idea of a free servant was bizarre. Some townspeople laughed, convinced it was a gimmick by the eccentric ranch owner who had a reputation for strange ideas. Others whispered in suspicion, wondering if there was a hidden trap. And yet many were curious enough to walk the uneven dirt road that led to the ranch, hoping to see what lay behind such a strange promise. The ranch itself was massive, spreading over rolling hills and bordered by the distant rise of mountains. Its wooden fences were weathered and worn, but sturdy, and the barns and corrals had clearly seen years of careful use. The scent of hay, horses, and the faint trace of smoke from the kitchen filled the air, giving the ranch a lived-in, welcoming feel despite the rumors surrounding it. Inside the main house, a young woman moved quietly through the kitchen and hallways. Her name was Clara, and she had been working at the ranch for as long as anyone could remember. Clara was not like the other young women in town. She had a calm, almost mysterious presence, and her hands moved with the ease of someone accustomed to hard work. She tended to the horses, fed the cattle, and helped with every task the ranch demanded, often without complaint. Her dark hair framed a face that bore the faint traces of hardship, yet her eyes held a spark that suggested resilience and intelligence. Clara had grown up in this region, though her past was not fully known to anyone. She had arrived at the ranch as a child, under circumstances that were murky at best. The ranch owner had taken her in, and over the years she had become an indispensable part of the ranch's daily life. She was not a servant in the traditional sense. She had a mind of her own and a quiet pride that kept her distinct from mere laborers. Still, the sign announcing a servant free made her uneasy. It reduced her life's work and her independence to a simple transaction, as if she were an object to be given away. Meanwhile, the town was abuzz with speculation. Samuel, a young rancher from a neighboring area, had heard the rumor about the ranch and decided to investigate. Unlike others who dismissed the advertisement as a joke, Samuel was intrigued. He was a man of practical mind, skilled with livestock and land, and he had a keen sense for opportunity. The idea of acquiring a large ranch was tempting, and the strange offer added a layer of mystery that he found irresistible. When Samuel arrived at the ranch, he was greeted not by the owner, who was away on business, but by Clara herself. She appeared at the edge of the corral, holding a bundle of hay, her movements precise and effortless. She watched Samuel with curiosity, as if she had seen countless strangers come and go but could immediately tell who belonged and who did not. Her voice, soft yet firm, called out a greeting. "Good morning." "Are you here about the ranch?" she asked. Samuel nodded, tipping his hat.
"Yes, I heard the advertisement. I must admit, it's unusual."
Breath. He glances around in desperate. People tend to talk about it a lot, but most don't understand. Samuel raised an eyebrow. "I'm hoping you can help me understand. I'm Samuel, by the way. I'm thinking of buying this place. And, well, I suppose I should meet the servant I'm supposed to get."
Clara's eyes flickered with a mixture of amusement and something deeper, a hint of indignation at the phrasing. "I'm Clara."
"And I'm not exactly something to get, if that's what you mean," she replied. Her words were calm, but Samuel sensed the undercurrent of pride and dignity that ran through her tone. Brr.
As they walked through the ranch together, Samuel began to notice things he hadn't expected. The barns were organized with care, each stall and pen meticulously maintained.
The fields, though rough in places, were productive, and the irrigation channels had clearly been tended with thoughtful planning. Clara explained each part of the ranch with ease, her knowledge extensive and practical. Brr. She spoke not like a servant following instructions, but like someone who had grown with the land, someone who understood the heartbeat of the ranch as intimately as her own. Samuel was impressed, and he found himself thinking that the advertisement had been misleading. The servant was not merely a worker. Clara was the backbone of the ranch, the one who had kept it running for years. The thought made him reconsider what he was truly buying. Operation. He was not just purchasing land. He was stepping into a life that already had rhythm, a life shaped by Clara's dedication and quiet strength. Beret. Over the next few hours, they continued their tour, moving through pastures where cattle grazed under the morning sun, and across fences that bordered the edge of the woods. Samuel asked questions about water sources, livestock, and crops, and Clara answered with clear, concise explanations. Its challenges and its small victories, and Samuel realized that she was not only knowledgeable but deeply invested in the land. She had a sense of responsibility that went beyond duty. It was personal, as if the ranch were an extension of herself. As the day wore on, Samuel felt a growing respect for Clara mingled with a quiet admiration. He began to see the value of what the advertisement had hinted at, though not in the way it had been written. This was not a simple transaction. This was an opportunity to work alongside someone extraordinary. Clara, in turn, observed Samuel carefully. He was capable, intelligent, and patient, and there was a sense of integrity in him that set him apart from the other men she had met. She did not trust easily, but she found herself cautiously intrigued by his presence. By late afternoon, the sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the rolling hills. The ranch seemed alive in a way that transcended the usual hum of frontier life. Birds called from the trees, horses stamped their hooves, and the wind carried the scent of dry grass and earth. Clara paused at the edge of the corral, watching the movement of the animals, and Samuel took a moment to observe her. He realized that the advertisement, strange as it had been, had succeeded in bringing him here, not merely to buy land, but to meet someone remarkable. Before leaving, Samuel asked Clara a question that had been on his mind since his arrival.
Why did the owner write it that way? Servant-free?
It seems unkind, or at least careless. Clara looked at him with a thoughtful expression. Perhaps it was meant to attract attention. Or perhaps it was meant to test people. Some see only what is written, while others notice what lies beneath. Those who look closer understand more than the sign could ever say. Samuel nodded, sensing the truth in her words. The ranch, the land, and the people who had lived there had stories and secrets that could not be captured in an advertisement. He left the ranch that evening with a mind full of questions and a growing sense of anticipation. The advertisement had been a doorway into a world he had not expected to find, a world shaped by hard work, resilience, and quiet strength, and anchored by a young woman who was far more than a servant. As night fell over the town and the ranch settled into a calm silence, Clara returned to her chores, moving with the same careful efficiency as always. Yet, as she worked, there was a flicker of thought in her mind about the stranger who had visited. Samuel's presence had stirred something unfamiliar, an awareness that her life might soon change in ways she could not yet predict. The future was uncertain, And while she felt both curiosity and caution, there was a faint unspoken hope that this new chapter might bring challenges worth facing and allies worth trusting. By the time the moon rose high above the hills, casting a silver glow across the land, the ranch seemed at peace once more. But beneath that calm surface, possibilities stirred, opportunities, dangers, and bonds yet to be formed. Clara knew that the coming days would test her in ways she had never imagined, and that the unusual advertisement that had brought Samuel to the ranch was only the beginning of a story that would reshape her life forever. The morning after Samuel's visit began quietly at the ranch, with the soft light of dawn spilling over the hills. Clara moved through the stables with her usual grace, feeding the horses and checking the fences, her mind still partly on the visitor from the previous day. Something about Samuel had unsettled her in a way she could not quite place. He was different from the men she had met in town, steady, observant, and respectful. He had listened to her explanations without interruption, had asked questions thoughtfully, and had noticed details most people ignored. Breath. Yet before she could dwell too long on him, another presence demanded her attention, one that would shift everything she thought she knew about her life. News arrived at the ranch in the form of a rider galloping up the dirt path, dust rising behind his horse. He carried a message, urgent and unexpected. The townsfolk had seen him hours before, and whispers had spread that an Apache warrior was approaching the area. His name was Nantan, and he was said to be a skilled and respected figure among his people. Clara froze for a moment when she heard the name, Narration. It was not a name she had expected to hear in this part of the frontier. Memories, long buried and carefully kept at bay, began to surface. As a child, she had known a boy from an Apache village who had been more than a friend, someone she had trusted deeply, someone who had called her sister. The connection had been strong, but life had pulled them apart, and she had not seen him since those early years. Now, hearing of his approach stirred both excitement and apprehension. By midday, Nantan arrived at the ranch, riding with a quiet confidence that commanded attention. His presence was striking, tall and strong, with dark hair tied back and eyes that seemed to look straight through anyone who met his gaze. He carried himself with the calm authority of someone used to responsibility and danger, and yet there was a gentleness in the way he approached Clara. "Clara!" he said, his voice low but steady, carrying a weight that made her heart skip. "I have found you!" Clara's hands paused mid-task, and she looked at him, searching his face for any sign that she had imagined this moment, but the recognition was unmistakable. The boy she had known so long ago had grown into a man of power and purpose, yet the bond between them was unchanged. She stepped closer, hesitant, but compelled by the memories of a shared childhood.
Nantan?
She whispered, almost afraid to speak his name aloud.
He nodded, a faint smile crossing his face.
Breath. "Sister," he said simply, using the term that had marked their connection as children. It was a word heavy with meaning, one that implied trust, protection, and family beyond blood. Clara felt a mixture of warmth and uncertainty. To be called sister by someone from her past was comforting, yet it also reminded her of the distance and difference between their worlds. Samuel, who had stayed nearby to observe, noticed the exchange and felt a subtle tension he could not ignore. Clara's expression had shifted from calm and composed to one of surprise and deep emotion. He watched quietly, sensing that there were histories at play far more complex than the simple roles of rancher and worker. He did not interfere, but he could feel the air thickening with unspoken words and memories. Over the next hours, Nantan explained why he had come. There were rumors of threats near the outskirts of the settlement, groups moving with the intention of claiming land or resources. He had been tracking these movements, seeking to protect his people and maintain peace where possible. His presence at the ranch was not an accident. It was part of a larger plan to understand the settlers' activities and prevent misunderstandings that could lead to violence. Clara listened, her heart torn. She wanted to support Samuel and the ranch, the place that had been her home for years, yet she also felt a deep responsibility to her people and to Nantan.
The tension between these loyalties weighed heavily on her.
She knew the world outside the ranch was dangerous, and the arrival of the Apache warrior made it clear that her life was about to become more complicated than she had ever imagined. As the day progressed, Clara found herself walking alongside Nantan, showing him the boundaries of the ranch and explaining the layout of the land. He listened carefully, asking questions about the fences, the water sources, and the paths through the hills. While they spoke, Clara could feel the years of separation dissolving. Their bond, once rooted in childhood trust, was being re-established, and it brought a sense of comfort, even amid the uncertainty. Samuel remained on the fringes, observing their interaction with curiosity and a growing sense of respect. He realized that Clara's connection to Nantan was not simply personal. It was a link to knowledge, experience, and survival skills that went beyond anything he had encountered. This was not merely a matter of land management. The ranch had become a place where two worlds intersected, each with its own challenges and wisdom. Later that evening, the tension that had been simmering throughout the day came to a head. A group of riders was spotted approaching the outskirts of the property, their intentions unclear. Samuel quickly moved to prepare the ranch for potential conflict, rounding up horses and checking the gates.
Oh!
Clara, drawing on her knowledge of the land and animals, assisted him efficiently, guiding him on where to place fences and obstacles to slow any unwanted visitors. Nantan, observing the activity, stepped forward to offer his insight. "There is a way to avoid confrontation if we act carefully," he said. His suggestions were precise, based on knowledge of the terrain and the movement of riders. Clara and Samuel followed his instructions, and together they managed to defuse what could have been a dangerous situation. The riders passed by without incident, but the experience left everyone aware of the fragile balance between peace and conflict in the frontier. That night, as the ranch settled into a quiet stillness, Clara found herself reflecting on the day's events. Nantan had reappeared in her life at a time she had not expected, bringing both joy and complication. Samuel had shown himself to be reliable and thoughtful, someone she could potentially trust in ways she had not anticipated. And the ranch itself, with its rolling hills and weathered buildings, remained the constant she had always depended on. Clara realized that her world was shifting. The presence of Nantan introduced not only a connection to her past, but also new responsibilities she had not foreseen. She could no longer view her life in simple terms of work and routine. She had to navigate relationships, loyalties, and threats that spanned communities and cultures. The choices she made in the coming days would have consequences far beyond the ranch itself. Samuel, too, was deep in thought that night. He had come seeking a business opportunity, a piece of land with potential. Instead, he had found a young woman whose intelligence and courage challenged his assumptions, and an Apache warrior whose presence demanded understanding and respect. He realized that owning the ranch was not merely a transaction. It was entering a world where alliances, history, and human connections mattered as much as fences and cattle. The following morning, Clara awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. She moved through the ranch with determination, knowing that she had to prepare for whatever challenges lay ahead. Nantan remained nearby, observing and offering guidance when necessary, while Samuel continued to learn the rhythms of the land under her guidance. Together, the three of them represented a fragile but growing partnership, one built on trust, knowledge, and the shared goal of protecting the ranch. As the sun rose higher, casting warm light over the fields and hills, Clara felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. She knew that Nantan's arrival was only the beginning of a story that would test her courage, loyalty, and ability to navigate the complex intersection of her past and present. The Apache warrior's presence brought memories and responsibilities she had long tried to set aside, but it also offered a chance to reconnect with a part of herself she had not forgotten. By midday, the ranch had settled into a rhythm once more. Horses grazed peacefully, cattle moved along familiar paths, and the buildings stood strong against the wind. Yet beneath the surface there was a tension that could not be ignored. Clara, Samuel, and Nantan were aware that the frontier was unpredictable, that danger could appear at any moment, and that every choice they made carried weight. The day had shown them both the beauty and the fragility of life on the ranch, and they knew that cooperation and understanding would be essential in the days to come. As evening approached, Clara paused at the edge of the fields, watching the sun sink behind the distant hills. The light touched the ranch in golden hues, illuminating the buildings, fences, and pastures with warmth and serenity. For a moment, the world seemed peaceful, yet Clara understood that change was inevitable. Samuel's arrival, Nantan's unexpected presence, and the mysteries of her own past had shifted the balance of her life. She was no longer merely a worker on the ranch, she was a central figure in a story that involved land, people, and history. In that quiet moment, Clara resolved to face the challenges ahead with courage and wisdom. She would navigate the complexities of loyalty and identity, honor her connection with Nantan, and continue to guide Samuel as he learned the ways of the land. The ranch was more than a home or a business. It was a place where lives intersected, where choices had consequences, and where resilience and bravery would be tested.
The night fell over the ranch, stars sparkling above the hills, and the gentle sounds of the land filled the air.
Clara returned to her chores with a steady heart, aware that the days ahead would bring new trials, discoveries, and unexpected bonds. The arrival of the Apache warrior had changed everything, and the story of the ranch, the land, and the people who inhabited it was only beginning to unfold. The days following Nantan's arrival were filled with a quiet intensity at the ranch. Clara moved through her duties with practiced efficiency, but her mind was never idle. She had spent years shaping the ranch into a place that was organized and productive, and she knew the land as well as anyone could.
Yet now her familiar routines were tinged with uncertainty. Nantan's presence brought both comfort and tension, reminding her of a world she had almost forgotten, a world of family, loyalty, and responsibility beyond the ranch.
Samuel, too, was adjusting to the unexpected dynamic. He had arrived seeking a business opportunity, a piece of land to expand his ambitions, but instead he found himself immersed in a delicate balance of cultures and histories. He was learning quickly, guided by Clara and Nantan, and he had begun to realize that managing the ranch required more than knowledge of fences, livestock, and crops. It required understanding people, their pasts, their motivations, and their sense of honor. Clara noticed Samuel observing Nantan closely, watching his every move. She could tell Samuel admired the warrior's skill and confidence, but she also sensed hesitation. Samuel had grown up among settlers, and the relationships between the settlers and the Apache were often fraught with misunderstanding. Clara understood the caution. She had seen it many times. Yet she also knew that Nantan's intentions were honorable. He had come to protect the land and its people, not to threaten them. One afternoon, Clara led Nantan and Samuel to the northern pasture, a wide stretch of rolling hills where the grass grew thick and the cattle grazed peacefully. She explained how water channels had been dug to prevent flooding, how certain paths through the hills minimized the risk of predators, and where hidden gullies could provide shelter for lost or frightened animals. Nantan listened intently, nodding occasionally while Samuel absorbed every detail. "You have a deep understanding of this land," Nantan said quietly, his eyes following Clara's movements. It is more than just a place to live. It is part of you. Clara hesitated, thinking of the dual lives she had led. Narration. I suppose so, she admitted. It has been my home for a long time. But it is not all mine. I belong to more than just this land. Narration. I have ties that go beyond what you see here. Nantan smiled gently. Narration. I know, he said simply. And that is why I am here. Narration. To remind you, not to take you away. Samuel listened silently, unsure of the history between them, but he could sense the weight of their bond. There was a connection that went beyond friendship, one built in trust and care. Narration. It made him aware that Clara's life was not simple, and that her loyalties might not always align with his expectations of a rancher's world. The day's quiet was suddenly interrupted by the distant sound of riders approaching. Brr. Clara tensed instinctively, her hand resting on the fence as she scanned the horizon. Samuel followed her gaze, recognizing the urgency in her posture. Narration. Nantan's eyes narrowed, and he moved swiftly to the edge of the pasture, assessing the situation. They are not from our group, Nantan said, his voice calm but firm. Brr. We must be cautious. They may intend to provoke conflict, or perhaps they are seeking something from the settlers. Clara's heart sank. The arrival of outsiders was never simple. Conflicts could escalate quickly on the frontier, and misunderstandings often led to violence. Brave. She knew the importance of preparation, how every detail of the ranch, every path and corral could mean the difference between safety and disaster. Together, the three of them acted with precision. Clara guided the cattle into a safer area of the pasture, while Nantan positioned himself strategically to monitor the riders' approach. Samuel, learning from both of them, assisted with the fences and gates, ensuring that the ranch was ready for any confrontation. Though there was tension in the air, there was also a quiet cooperation, a sense that each person's skills were vital to maintaining balance. The riders passed without incident, disappearing over the hill, leaving only the sound of wind and the faint echo of hooves behind. Clara exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and lingering unease. They could have caused trouble, she said, her voice low. We were lucky this time.
Nantan placed a hand on her shoulder. Luck is only part of it, he said.
Preparation, knowledge, and understanding make the difference. You have all three. As the days passed, Clara found herself reflecting more deeply on her identity. She had been raised among settlers, yet her roots reached back to her childhood with Nantan's people. That duality had always been a part of her, but it had rarely been so visible. Now, living alongside Samuel and Nantan, she could no longer ignore it. She had to navigate her responsibilities to both communities, balancing the expectations of the settlers with the loyalty she felt to her Apache heritage. This internal struggle was complicated further by Samuel's growing reliance on her and desperation. He trusted her decisions, often seeking her advice on matters ranging from land management to interactions with neighbors. Clara realized that he was not merely learning about the ranch, he was learning about her. Every choice she made, every piece of knowledge she shared revealed a part of who she was, and she found herself wondering how much he truly understood. One evening after a long day of work, Clara and Nantan walked along the ridge overlooking the ranch. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the wind carrying the scent of dry grass and distant pines. The moment was quiet, yet heavy with meaning. You have grown strong, Nantan said softly, breaking the silence. Not just in body, but in spirit. You carry two worlds within you, and yet you balance them with grace. Clara looked down at her hands, remembering the years of work that had shaped her, the struggles and triumphs that had defined her life.
It is not always easy, she admitted. Sometimes I feel torn.
I want to honor both sides of who I am, But the world does not always make that simple. Nantan nodded. You are not alone in this, Baration. There are those who understand you, and those who will stand with you when the time comes. But you must choose wisely, for your decisions affect more than just yourself. The weight of his words lingered long after they returned to the ranch. Clara knew that she could not avoid the challenges ahead. The frontier was full of unpredictability, and her role as a bridge between communities would require courage, patience, and wisdom. She also realized that her bond with Nantan was more than personal. It was a connection that could influence the course of events in ways she had yet to see. Meanwhile, Samuel began to notice subtle changes in Clara. She moved with confidence and authority, guiding both him and the ranch workers. Yet there was a depth to her that hinted at experiences beyond the ranch, memories, loyalties, and cultural knowledge that he could not fully comprehend. He admired her resilience, but he also wondered about the burdens she carried and the choices she might face. Tensions began to surface in subtle ways. Neighboring settlers unfamiliar with Nantan and wary of his presence raised questions and expressed unease. Clara and Samuel found themselves navigating not only the physical challenges of the ranch but also the social dynamics of the frontier community. Every interaction required tact, every decision a careful balance between fairness and caution. Despite these pressures, there were moments of quiet triumph. Clara taught Samuel techniques for managing livestock that he had never learned before. Nantan shared knowledge of the land and the natural world that enriched their understanding of the ranch's surroundings. Together, the three of them developed a rhythm, a partnership rooted in respect and complementary skills. It was a fragile balance, yet it offered hope that the ranch could thrive even amid uncertainty. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Clara found a moment to reflect in solitude. She walked along the edge of the pasture, the wind rustling the tall grass around her. Her thoughts returned to the duality of her life, the settlers who had raised her and the Apache family she had never forgotten. She realized that the future of the ranch, and perhaps her own future, depended on her ability to reconcile these two worlds.
It was a daunting task, but Clara felt a quiet determination.
She would not allow fear or uncertainty to dictate her choices. She had survived hardships before, and she had learned that courage often meant standing between conflicting worlds and finding a path forward that honored both. Nantan's presence reminded her that she was never truly alone, while Samuel's trust gave her the confidence to lead and protect the land she loved. As night fell over the ranch, the stars emerging one by one, Clara knew that the coming days would bring new challenges. Threats from outsiders could arise at any moment, and misunderstandings between communities were never far away. Yet she also understood that opportunity, knowledge, and loyalty could forge alliances that were stronger than fear. The ranch was more than a home. It was a place where cultures intersected, where bonds could be tested, and where courage would define the future. With that thought, Clara returned to her chores, her heart steady and her mind alert. The duality of her life would continue to shape her decisions, but she was ready. She would guide Samuel in understanding the land, navigate her bond with Nantan, and protect the ranch with the skill and wisdom she had cultivated over years. The frontier was unpredictable, but Clara knew that she had the strength, knowledge, and courage to face whatever came next. The morning sun broke over the horizon, casting a golden light across the rolling hills of the ranch. Clara moved through the fields with purpose, her mind alert to every sound, the soft lowing of cattle, the rustle of wind through the tall grass, even the distant cries of birds. The peace of the morning was fragile, for Clara knew that life on the frontier could change in an instant. Samuel had risen early as well, walking beside her with a quiet determination. He had begun to understand the rhythms of the ranch, learning to read the land as Clara did, noticing the subtle shifts in the weather and the movements of the animals. Yet despite his growing competence, there was a tension between them that Samuel could not ignore. Bray. He sensed that Clara's mind was elsewhere, preoccupied with matters that went beyond the fences and fields. Nantan had been restless that morning, riding along the perimeter of the ranch and observing the hills in the distance. Bray. He had sensed movement, a faint trace of riders traveling in the territory beyond the settlement. The frontier was unpredictable, and skirmishes or disputes could erupt without warning. Breath. Clara and Nantan had discussed strategies, but now the possibility of conflict seemed closer than ever. By midday, the situation escalated. Brr.
A small group of outsiders appeared on the horizon, moving toward the ranch with an air of determination. They were not just wandering travelers. They were armed, and their intentions were unclear.
Brr.
Clara's heart quickened as she realized that the moment she had feared might be arriving. The ranch, the home she had worked to protect, was suddenly in potential danger.
Desperation. Clara moved quickly, calling Samuel and Nantan to action. Together they assessed the terrain and considered how to protect both the land and the people who depended on it. Brr. Clara's knowledge of hidden gullies, natural barriers, and escape routes gave them a crucial advantage. She directed Samuel to reinforce the gates and move livestock to safer areas, while Nantan positioned himself where he could observe and respond to the approaching group. Desperation. As the riders drew closer, Clara could see the tension in their faces. They were outsiders, and their presence carried the potential for confrontation. Brea, she realized that her role was no longer passive. She had to take action, balancing diplomacy with the readiness to defend the ranch. Her dual identity, once an internal struggle, now became a source of strength. She could see the situation from both perspectives, the settlers' concern for property and safety, and the broader understanding of movement, culture, and loyalty that Nantan brought with him. When the riders reached the edge of the ranch, Clara stepped forward, her voice firm and steady. "This is private property," she called. Brr. "You must state your purpose here." The leader of the group, a tall man with a hard expression, hesitated. "We heard there's a ranch here," he said. "We're looking for resources, food, water, maybe work. We mean no harm, but we are tired and hungry." Birth. Clara assessed their demeanor carefully. Some were genuinely weary travelers, but others had a watchful, calculating look that suggested more than simple need. She knew she had to act quickly. "You may rest here for a short time," she said. Brr. "But you will not take what does not belong to you, and you will respect the land and its people." Nantan stood beside her, silent but alert. His presence sent a clear message. Any threat to the ranch would not go unnoticed. Samuel, too, had moved into position, ready to assist in maintaining order. Together, the three formed a united front, blending caution with authority. The outsiders accepted her terms, at least for the moment. They set up a small camp at the edge of the property, and Clara watched carefully, aware that the situation could change in an instant. As she moved among them, offering water and guidance, she noticed the subtle interactions, the way some of the group looked to her for leadership, the quiet respect they showed for Nantan, and the curiosity in Samuel's eyes as he observed how she handled the delicate balance of control and diplomacy. Burlesque. Despite the temporary calm, Clara knew this was only a test. The frontier was full of unpredictable challenges, and the outsider's arrival was a reminder that every day brought new decisions that could have lasting consequences. She felt the weight of responsibility more than ever. The ranch was not just land or livestock, it was a home, a livelihood, and a symbol of the life she had built. Protecting it required courage, quick thinking, and an understanding of human nature that few possessed. As the afternoon wore on, Clara found a quiet moment to speak with Nantan. They walked along the ridge overlooking the fields, the wind carrying the faint scent of dust and grass. "They are not here to harm us!" "At least not yet," Clara said. "But we must be ready for anything." Ayers. "I can feel it." Nantan nodded.
You are right. We must prepare, but we must also seek understanding.
Conflict is not always the answer. Sometimes it is patience, wisdom, and careful observation that make the difference. Inspiration. Clara considered his words. She had always respected Nantan's insight, but now she realized the truth in it, more than ever.
Her choices in the coming days would determine not only the safety of the ranch, but also the trust and cooperation between the different people who depended on it.
She could no longer act solely for herself or for the land. She had to act with awareness of all the lives intertwined with her decisions. That evening, tensions rose again when one of the outsiders attempted to sneak into the barn looking to take supplies without permission. Clara caught him in the act, her movements swift and deliberate. She confronted him, her voice steady but commanding. I told you the rules. You will respect this place, or you will leave. The man hesitated, then backed away, surprised by her authority. Nantan and Samuel arrived moments later, assessing the situation. The incident was a small victory, but it underscored the reality that the frontier offered no guarantees. Clara realized that protecting the ranch required constant vigilance and unwavering resolve. Over the next few days, Clara found herself balancing multiple roles: caretaker of the land, mediator between groups, and protector of both property and people. Her relationship with Samuel evolved as well. He had begun to see her not merely as a guide or a worker, but as a partner whose judgment and courage were indispensable. They coordinated strategies, shared responsibilities, and learned to trust each other in ways that transcended simple cooperation. Nantan's presence continued to be a guiding force. He shared knowledge of the land and the natural world, teaching Clara and Samuel techniques for managing the ranch more effectively. He also reminded Clara of her connections beyond the settlers, encouraging her to honor the responsibilities she carried toward her people. His guidance was subtle but powerful, reinforcing the importance of perspective, balance, and foresight. The climax of the tension arrived one morning when word reached the ranch that a larger band of outsiders was approaching, intent on claiming territory near the settlement. Clara, Samuel, and Nantan quickly assessed the situation. This was no longer a minor incident. It was a serious threat that required decisive action. Clara felt the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders. She could not afford hesitation. She devised a plan that balanced defense with diplomacy. Samuel prepared the ranch's defenses, using fences, barriers, and strategic placements of animals to protect the land. Nantan positioned himself to observe movements and respond to threats, while Clara coordinated communications and strategies among all parties. Her knowledge of both the settlers and the Apache gave her a unique ability to predict potential conflicts and mediate solutions before they escalated. When the outsiders arrived, they were met not with anger or aggression, but with organization, authority, and clarity. Clara stepped forward, speaking with confidence and firmness. This land is protected, and we will not allow harm to come to it or its people, she said. Her voice carried over the fields, commanding attention. But the confrontation was tense, but Clara's careful planning and insight diffused what could have been a violent encounter. The outsiders, recognizing both the strength and the intelligence of the ranch's leadership, withdrew peacefully. The resolution brought relief, but also a deep sense of accomplishment and responsibility. Clara realized that her ability to balance courage with wisdom had saved the ranch and strengthened the bonds between all involved. That night, as the stars shone above the hills, Clara reflected on the events of the past days. She had faced challenges that tested her courage, loyalty, and judgment. She had acted not only for herself but for Samuel, Nantan, the settlers, and the land she loved. The choices she made had immediate consequences, but also shaped the future of the ranch and the relationships that defined it. Samuel approached her quietly, his expression thoughtful. I've learned more from you in these days than I could have imagined, he said. You are not just a caretaker. You are the heart of this place. Clara felt a quiet warmth at his words, but she knew the truth of her role was more complex. She was the bridge between worlds, the one who could navigate the tensions of frontier life with insight. Her responsibilities were far from over, but she felt prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Nantan joined them, his presence steady and reassuring.
You have done well, he said. The ranch, the people, and the land are stronger because of your choices. Remember, courage is not only in action, but in wisdom and understanding.
Best. Clara nodded, feeling the weight of his words. The frontier was unpredictable, and life on the ranch would continue to demand vigilance, intelligence, and courage.
Yet she was no longer uncertain. She had faced challenges, navigated conflicts, and proven her strength.
Whatever came next, she would meet it with the same determination and insight that had guided her thus far. The sun rose slowly over the ranch, painting the hills in soft shades of gold and orange. Clara stood at the edge of the pasture, watching the cattle graze peacefully. The events of the past weeks had left their mark. Fences had been repaired, gates reinforced, and small signs of wear across the land reminded her of the challenges they had faced. But despite the work yet to be done, there was a quiet sense of accomplishment. The ranch had survived threats and tensions, and Clara had proven her courage, intelligence, and leadership. Samuel walked beside her, carrying a bundle of tools and supplies. His expression was calm but thoughtful, reflecting the changes he had experienced since first arriving at the ranch. He had come seeking opportunity, but he had found something far more profound, a sense of partnership, trust, and admiration for the woman who had guided him through the complexities of frontier life.
"You've taught me more than I could have imagined," Samuel said quietly.
Not just about the ranch, but about people, about courage, and about making difficult decisions. Clara smiled, a hint of warmth in her eyes. We've learned together, she said. The land, the animals, the people, it all teaches us if we take the time to listen. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Nantan. He rode up slowly, his presence commanding yet gentle. Clara felt a familiar calm wash over her as he dismounted. His connection to her was more than friendship. It was a bond forged in childhood, strengthened through distance, and solidified by trust and shared history. The ranch is in good hands, Nantan said, his voice low but firm. You have proven yourself, Clara, not only to the settlers and to me, but to yourself. Clara felt a mixture of pride and humility. She had always worked hard, always cared for the land, but this recognition was different. It was acknowledgement of her choices, her courage, and her ability to navigate the complex world around her. Thank you, she said softly. I couldn't have done it without both of you. Nantan nodded, his gaze meeting hers with a depth of understanding that words could not capture. You have found balance, he said.
You honor both your past and your present. That is strength. As the day progressed, life at the ranch settled into a new rhythm.
Clara continued her work, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and organizing the fields. Samuel assisted eagerly, learning from her every step of the way. He no longer viewed her as simply a guide or a servant, as the old advertisement had implied, but as a partner and equal, someone whose skills and judgment were invaluable. The settlers who lived nearby began to notice the changes as well.
Word spread of Clara's courage and the way she had successfully navigated the challenges that threatened the ranch. Some had been skeptical of her abilities, influenced by old stereotypes about women in frontier towns.
Now, they saw her as a leader, someone capable of protecting her land, mediating conflicts, and earning respect from both settlers and the Apache. Clara found herself walking a fine line between two worlds, but she no longer felt torn. Bray. The events of the past weeks had clarified her place. Bray. She could honor her Apache roots through her connection with Nantan, while also embracing the life she had built on the ranch among the settlers. She had learned that identity was not a limitation, but a source of strength, a bridge that could bring people together rather than divide them. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Clara and Samuel walked to the edge of the property together. The fields stretched before them, bathed in golden light, and the distant hills seemed to shimmer with promise. Samuel paused, watching Clara as she surveyed the land. Do you ever think about what comes next? He asked. Clara considered the question carefully. I think about what we can build, she said. Not just here on the ranch, but in our lives, in the community, and in the way we connect with people. The land is important, but so are the relationships we nurture. Samuel nodded. I understand now, he said. This place, these people, it's not just about ownership or work. It's about trust, respect, and making the right choices, even when they're hard. Nantan joined them at that moment, his expression calm and thoughtful. He had spent the day observing the surrounding area, ensuring that no further threats approached, but now, as he looked at Clara and Samuel, there was a sense of peace in his demeanor. The future is in your hands, he said. You have learned to balance courage with wisdom, strength with understanding. That is how you protect not just land, but life itself. Clara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had not been easy. She had faced threats, difficult decisions, and moments of doubt. But through it all, she had remained true to herself, guided by knowledge, loyalty, and compassion. She had navigated the complexities of two worlds, and in doing so had found clarity and purpose. As evening fell, the ranch was alive with quiet activity. Samuel worked on repairing a section of the fence while Clara moved among the animals, ensuring they were fed and cared for. Nantan walked along the edge of the pasture, keeping watch but also taking in the beauty of the land. The stars began to appear one by one, twinkling above the hills, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of grass, earth, and the lingering warmth of the sun. The sense of accomplishment was palpable. Clara had faced her fears, embraced her responsibilities, and proven that courage and wisdom could guide even the most uncertain situations.
She had earned the respect of Samuel, Nantan, the settlers, and the land itself.
And most importantly, she had reconciled the dual aspects of her identity, finding harmony between her Apache roots and her life on the ranch.
In the following days, Clara continued to strengthen the bonds between the ranch, Samuel, and Nantan.
They worked together to improve the land, share knowledge, and maintain a balance that would protect both the people and the animals who depended on it. The ranch began to thrive in ways it never had before, a testament to the careful leadership and cooperation that Clara fostered.
Inspiration for Clara grew with each passing day.
He saw not only her skill and knowledge, but also her integrity, her courage, and her unwavering commitment to doing what was right.
He understood that she was no ordinary woman. She was a leader, a protector, and a bridge between worlds. Nantan, too, acknowledged Clara's growth. Their bond as siblings was stronger than ever, built on trust, respect, and shared history. He understood that while she had chosen a path that included the settlers, she had not abandoned her heritage. Instead, she had embraced it in a way that honored both worlds, creating connections that could withstand challenges and threats alike. One afternoon, Clara stood at the edge of the ridge overlooking the ranch, watching the sun cast its golden light across the fields. The hills, the fences, the barns, and the animals were all part of a living, breathing world that she had helped shape. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that the ranch was secure, that the people she cared for were safe, and that the future held promise. Samuel joined her, standing quietly beside her as they looked out over the land. "You've built more than a ranch," he said softly. "You've built a community, a family, and a legacy, Burr. And it's just the beginning." Clara smiled, feeling the truth of his words. The journey had been long and difficult, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident in her place in the world. She had faced challenges that tested her courage and loyalty, and she had risen to meet them with grace and determination. Nantan approached, his presence steady and reassuring. Inspiration. He looked at Clara with pride and admiration. "You have honored your past, embraced your present, and shaped the future," he said. Inspiration. "That is a rare and powerful gift. The ranch, the people, and the land are fortunate to have you." As night fell, the three of them stood together, looking out over the ranch under the vast expanse of stars. The land was safe, the animals were cared for, and the community was stronger because of Clara's courage and leadership. The challenges had been many, but they had been met with wisdom, strength, and cooperation. Clara knew that life on the frontier would continue to present obstacles, but she also knew that she was ready. Inspiration. She had learned to balance her dual identity, navigate conflicts, and make choices that honored both people and land. She had proven that courage, wisdom, and compassion could guide even the most difficult paths. As the night deepened, Clara returned to the ranch house, her heart calm and her mind clear. The future was hers to shape, and she was determined to continue protecting the land, the people, and the bonds that had been strengthened through trials and triumphs. The ranch would thrive, and she would remain at its heart, guiding, protecting, and leading with the courage and wisdom that had brought her this far. For the first time in a long while, Clara felt a sense of true belonging. She belonged to the land she had nurtured, to the people she had guided and protected, and to the heritage that had shaped her. She had faced the tests of the frontier and emerged stronger, wiser, and more certain of who she was. And in that certainty, she found peace, purpose, and the promise of a bright future.